It's a personal policy of mine that we're not hiring a-holes. That's just not going to happen. If they fit with the team, if they can't collaborate well, then that's not the hire. We want people from different backgrounds and different experiences at Onfleet for sure. But the skill to collaborate and work through problems together, that's super important.
Welcome to SaaS That App, building B2B web applications, the podcast where we share real-world stories, practical advice, and tech insights for those building or thinking about starting a tech-enabled business. I'm your co-host, Aaron Marchbanks.
And I'm Justin Edwards. Each week we bring you the stories, strategies, and insights you need to build your SaaS or tech-enabled business smarter, not harder. Let's dive right in.
Hello and welcome back, everyone, to SaaS That App. With me, as always, with his air conditioner sadly turned off at the moment, Mr. Justin Edwards. Justin, how's it going, man?
Man, it's a shame to have to be so professional. Like I have to turn off the AC while I'm recording. It's a real pain.
The noisy background. There's so much construction going on in my area. I'm just like in constant fear of recording these and there'd just be like some sort of an explosion. They had a big crane next door going yesterday, so I was thankful that we didn't have that recording in the background. Well, it's going well here though, weather-wise, so I'll take the not having to have the air conditioner on quite yet. Joining us today also is Kjell Hedstrom. He is a CTO at Onfleet, which is a platform powering the last mile delivery for thousands of businesses. It handles things from route optimization to real-time tracking, and their software helps bring order to one of the most chaotic environments out there. Now, Kjell's career has been shaped by solving complex operational problems where inputs are messy, stakes are high, and things don't always go according to plan. And we're going to find out about some of that today. We'll also be digging into what it takes to build a SaaS in the physical world, so how products evolve under real-world pressure, what founders can learn from operating where software meets reality and all that good stuff. Kjell, welcome to the pod.
Well, thanks for having me.
So hardest question always is the very first one. How in the world did you get here, where you are now?
That's a good question. I am in Montana right now, but the accent is Swedish. That's where I grew up in the very north, close to the Arctic area. And this is actually my fourth country. I lived in Norway and Spain also before I moved to the US in 2013. And how? I don't know. Coincidences and like weird stuff. I met my wife in Spain. She's from Iowa. We lived about a decade in Scandinavia. And then we decided to move back to the US. I had finished my master's here in the US also. So I had a pretty strong connection to the country. All our kids, I have 5. I didn't have 5 at the time, but they were all like dual citizens. So it was like, felt like a pretty natural move for us.
What part of Iowa, if I can ask?
Just close to the Mississippi. So it is from Clinton, Iowa.
Okay. Justin and I both have some connections to Iowa. I lived there for about 7 years in the Cedar Rapids area.
Oh, cool. Like the Quad Cities area.
That's where my family's from.
Yeah. So interesting. Always a small world. So you've spent a lot of time just in a general sense dealing with software, solving problems in software, working with organizations that specialize in software and solving problems with it. So what kind of drew you to that space initially?
Initially, I wanted to be a doctor, actually. And Sweden is an interesting country where everything is like monopolistic. I had an unusual career path, so I was rejected with my application, even though I was well overqualified. So my second choice was computer science. I've always loved math, and so that put me in this direction. My career started really in air traffic control systems, more on the operational side, dealing with integrations and dealing with people. Then I had a martial arts career on the side also. And then I had an accident outside of martial arts that ended my martial arts career. And then I decided to really dig into really my focus for my education, which was computer science. And I realized I loved it, both dealing with people and with computer science and really tough challenges. So I started my career in safety critical software, C++, and then moved more to like mission critical software, like missile, early warning systems, and so on. And then medical technology later. And then it just rolled on from there on.
That's amazing. I love all the verticals. That's really cool. It's somewhat reminiscent of kind of what we do. Justin and I both work in a consultancy, and it's fun because we're not like singularly product focused. So we get to work in a lot of different verticals and we get to become kind of keepers of knowledge and information. And we have to kind of learn the business or the industry or whatever to really be able to write software in it. And so I always find that kind of unique and special, but that's very cool. That's what you've done. So I want to get into Onfleet in just a minute, but Tell me a little bit about like pre-Onfleet, what kind of experience that you did have in all these different software industries that kind of shaped how you approach building things now as someone who's in Onfleet.
They have really shaped me to a great extent. I think when my career really like started in air traffic control and setting up like ATC systems, I was in charge of Santiago Airport in Chile. And then I took over the responsibility for London Heathrow, worked in setting up all the systems for the new control tower, which is now an old control tower, I guess. But this was back in like 2005. I think they had a big inauguration and the brand new systems up there. And like really like working with redundant systems, but understanding a metric-driven approach, evidence-driven approach, but not just like assuming the data is correct, but actually like looking at the breadcrumbs and following the evidence. I also handled a lot with like people and like interpersonal conflict. And, I worked with big airports with like maybe tens of different vendors all coming together, times with weird and quirky personalities, and getting them to align and getting everything to work out. So the career afterwards was in consultancy. I worked for a consultant company, HiQ in Stockholm. I think they now might be more global. And my focus was more like first SDET and QA sides, which really cemented the importance of quality, I think. But then fairly shortly afterwards, I took over a team there and tried to like really like rejuvenate their development practices. This was when Agile was fairly new also. So we rolled it out and turned it to something of an Agile coach for that company. And it kind of like that direction of driving with quality, but also like putting down a fundamental building blocks that are everlasting, or like making it easier for the company to stand on as they continue to grow. So I went more and more into like the change management and leadership type of consultancy. And then after a couple of years in the defense industry, I moved more towards other types of safety critical software, more in the medical industry. So I work for Elektra and Maquet in St. Jude in Uppsala and Stockholm. Anything from like heart stent placement type things to brain surgery to medical ventilators. All like really interesting and cool things. But we really want not only the software to be robust, but you really want the organization to be robust, because there's always some kind of like reflection or mirroring between the two. And I had lots of fun with it. And then it became more and more clear to me that we needed to move either inside of Sweden or to the US. And so even though I was quite high up on like leadership type things for that type of consultancy, when I moved to the US, it was easier to go back as an IC. I had made some software that was used a little bit here and there over the world. And one of the companies that were using it was a security company in Boulder, Colorado. So they heard that I was moving over and they gave me a job offer. I interviewed for Apple and got an offer and went there. And it's like, I can't deal with this commute. And I went back to that company and checked it out. And turns out I love the Rockies. And so I spent 5 years in Colorado before I moved to Montana.
So how did you come to be involved with Onfleet and that product in that company?
Oh my goodness, COVID.
That's been an answer we've gotten a lot, actually, at most recent career stuff.
COVID threw a curveball at most people and most companies, I think. And then so I worked for ClassPass, now MindBody, and they went from $1 billion company to zero in revenue in a couple of weeks. They had massive layoffs. So after that, I went back again to IC for a while, and I did some consultancy and freelancing. And then I started working like roughly a year at each place. I worked at FlowHub, cannabis retailing, and then for Ganas, who works more in the agriculture hiring and staffing scene. And both companies were struggling for various reasons, but very closely connected to COVID. And we both like straightened the ship for them and so on. But then when things were a little bit tougher for Ganas, I felt it was time to move on. And it was the right call for me, I think. But it was a little bit tough because then in, my goodness, 2023, I think it was probably one of the hardest job markets. And it took some time for me to get my feet back underneath me. But then in December, I think, of 2023, and then I started to get more traction with leadership positions. And I got in contact with Onfleet. And I did a straight up job application to them. I think they had something like 2,000 people applying for it. But I could see some alignment with my past. Like they handled a lot of like routing, logistics, just like understanding mapping systems and so on. It's something that's always been interesting to me since my air traffic control days. And so I felt an alignment with them, and it was almost love at first sight, I think. I think it was a good match with me and the leadership team. I really liked the focus they had, what they tried to achieve, and how they had learned some tough lessons in the past and were now trying to like straighten up. So I felt like they've been through a lot. They learned their lessons. They're eager to improve. And I think it can make a big difference here.
Can you shoot out a couple of those examples of those tough lessons? That's actually something I'm super interested in. What did they have to learn?
Well, they had done pivots before. They had started with one focus and they had done some hard pivots. Then I think COVID came and they were just perfectly placed and positioned with the product. Everyone needed deliveries, right? They needed shipments and they were just there at the right time. And so they grew really, 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 really fast. And they grew maybe too fast, or maybe they needed a little bit more structure. So once COVID simmered off, it's still around us, but we don't have the societal fear about it anymore. Then businesses tapered off a little bit. And so they were a bit too heavy on their expense front. And then it needed to correct that. It was both just spending wise, but also like how they were staffed, how they were organized, really focused on like the infrastructure and so on. And a lot of these areas I started to look at when I joined. In fact, I would say that it's a completely different business on the R&D side now. And like we changed ground up from culture to meeting culture to how we do agile, what our infrastructure looks like, how we do releases. Like we left no stone unturned, I would say.
Real quick, this episode is brought to you by Delta Systems, which is what Aaron and I do when we're not talking through microphones to you, the people of the internet. We've got a really, really great software team here, and we love to work with cool people on cool projects. So if that sounds like you and you've got a problem or you're in some kind of a jam, go to deltasystems.com, grab a time with us. We can beat up on your problem together, and if there's a fit there, amazing, we'll help you out. So deltasystems.com, grab an appointment, and hey, maybe we can work together. So do you bring a lot of kind of methodology in your background from safety critical systems and developing in that kind of high stakes environment where mistakes just can't happen? Do you bring that with you to Onfleet and the stuff you're working on now? Or is that some stuff that you kind of choose to leave behind and not introduce?
I think I'm damaged goods. I think I will always keep that in mind and so on. And especially now with agentic engineering and agentic systems comes into place, where I think last time I checked at Onfleet, like the teams are between like 70% all agentic coding and 100% all agentic coding. So like we don't want slop. We don't want low quality. And so the change we have done here has been like heavily influenced by my background. And I think overall in engineering, I think every single person would agree that our quality now in everything that we're releasing, it's a magnitude higher quality than before we really like dig into this new approach. And so we follow an evidence-driven approach where we try to avoid having prompting a necessary dev skill that makes or breaks the output quality. And instead, we're trying to put systems in place so that when we're making learnings, it improves the whole system, not just for the individual person. And of course, it's a journey. The whole industry is in that journey right now. So it's not the same for every team. Intentionally, we aren't like putting the exact framework in for everyone. I think we are still in heavy experimentation and iteration across the team. But all the teams, I think, are very heavily influenced by the philosophy that I brought to the table.
I love that. It makes sense. I like the idea of having that kind of rigor and background and then using that skill set and that experience to kind of push forward in the war against slop.
It also turns out that these agentic systems, regardless if you work with Claude or Code or something like that, is that they are the most efficient and most deterministic output if they are laser focused. And you put in these safeguards, we call it like agentic harnesses and so on, so that we also like validate the output. Like when you put that in place and driving with a quality mindset, we don't trust a single agent versus we don't trust a single human. Like we trust a process where of checks and balances and always driving with a quality mindset and always driving opinionated with a coding philosophy in mind. Yeah, it just turns out that when you put that in place, systems, they really excel.
I love that mindset, the trust but verify. And I like that you apply it in both directions. That was going to be one of my questions, actually. I mean, obviously it's getting better and better, but agents in general and AI, while it's gotten much better, is still not 100% trustworthy. And then by the same token, you also have humans and you inject personal traits and characteristics of individuals' coding styles and what they see and how they see things too. And so I think that's great that you approach it that way.
Turns out humans are not 100% trustworthy either.
Right.
We have fights with our spouses. We have like a tummy ache, or we're distracted by something else, right? We do mistakes so much all the time. So that's why through the hundreds of years that we have engineers, we have established processes on checks and balances and validation, and that we have reviews in place and so on. And so really using the same mindset now.
And also an appropriate reference group. So I know self-driving cars has been a little bit of this kind of double standard where it's like, well, self-driving cars are supposed to get to 0 accidents ever. They need to be flawless because human drivers are so good. The reference group is not fair, right? And I think that also comes into with agentic coding, right? Where it's like, well, yeah, but I've had people who work for me do some really dumb stuff too. And we just need a little coaching and a little help and a little process that fixes that stuff up. So I like that a lot.
I feel so much safer in a Waymo in San Francisco than with a human Uber driver who is really stressed and trying to like complete his run on the shortest amount possible. I just wish you could go to the airport with a Waymo, because then I would definitely do it.
I'm waiting for the donkey and chicken extension of Waymo to drop so they can deploy here in Mexico.
I wish you all the best with that. Given your history and all the things that you did bring with you into this new role that have obviously helped, it's helped you, it's helped focus your team, it's helped put these qualities and these processes in place. I'm curious, is there anything from your past that you intentionally did not bring in? Is there something like you had to unlearn, a potential habit that you just couldn't bring into this particular environment or system or processes?
I was a tank chief in the Swedish army.
Okay, now I have many questions.
second lieutenant through the compulsory service. So, yeah, I don't think I'm a tank commander. It's a light infantry tank, so it's a tiny tank. But yeah, to some extent, it's still the same mindset, that not stepping down from the command position a little bit. The Swedish army is very tiny. And back then, we were being ready for trouble with Russia, and now they're gearing up again. But with a tiny army, you have to have independent thinkers, because you can't have like the big US forces type mindset. You have to operate independently in small pockets and so on. So like they really raised independent thinkers. And while you're following orders, you have to navigate a lot of unknowns yourself. I think to some extent that mindset like really resonated with me. I don't think they taught me anything new there, but I think certainly take that with me to some extent, but without being the commanding officer. Then again, you should talk to my managers. Maybe they disagree about that.
That's great. So back to Onfleet then specifically, and in the realm of what you all do, and I know that there's a whole spectrum of things that the service offers, but what would you say, since you've stepped in particular, has been like the most difficult or challenging problem to solve from the platform or software perspective, outside of dealing with individuals and people, which I know is a whole other realm?
Yeah, and that's a huge part of it for sure. Our infrastructure was really like in the bad legacy area. We were really inefficient in just deploying things. I think we deployed like once a week before, and with each deployment then comes a lot of risk. And so really speeding that up to having deployments at least once per day, maybe more. I think that was like a huge challenge that had been on the works for many years, but we just moved very quick on that when I joined. And outside of that, I think that kind of like a natural growing pains for Onfleet, for all startup companies, is scale. Like you don't prepare for the big enterprise customers when you're tiny. You don't have the scale for it. But then once, like now we have customers who delivers in the hundreds of thousands, but we still have many companies that are much, much smaller. Maybe they deliver 1,000 deliveries per day. And so like cater to that range, like don't abandon your base, but like let's make sure that they're happy. Our like largest customers, that is still like an ongoing journey for us. And I think we're getting much better at it, but definitely been some areas where like, oh yeah, we need to really dig into how we can scale up and do it more efficiently.
And so on the human side of things, you're obviously dealing with customers, people that you actually service, but you're also dealing with, I'm assuming, drivers, dispatchers, the actual logistics and the complexities that go into that whole notion of the last mile, right? So I'm just curious, as you're iterating, as you're improving the software, and as you're looking at ways to become more efficient, to be able to scale, are there groups within each of those drivers and dispatchers and customers that you really kind of focus on or key on? Do you have some like round tables where you're trying to gather information? Do you accept comments and feedback? How do you go about iterating and knowing what it is that you're putting out there is going to be useful to those groups of people that you service?
I really rely a lot on my product partner there, the CPO, Andra here at Onfleet for a lot of that. But yes, we have frequent customer calls with them on various levels of the company also. And we really try to dig into getting both feedback as well as pain points. On our driver side, I know our mobile team are like extremely laser focused on feedback they're getting on their mobile app. And if something seems off or people are upset about something, often they reach out directly to the driver, even though they might have many thousands of drivers. We don't get feedback from everyone. So right now, like last time I checked, we still have a 5-star for our mobile app, and it really makes a big impact. But yeah, like we have many different tiers. So we have all the way up for like company leadership. We have dispatchers really that are working day to day with our systems. Like you said, we have the drivers and we have the end consumers. The end consumers, like you get a text message say, hey, your driver's on the way. We estimate them to be at your door in like 20 minutes. And like, do you have any instructions for them? Like all that messaging and making it safe also for both parties so they can text each other afterwards. And so on. Like that is very important for us as well. We want both the end consumer to have a good experience, absolutely the drivers. And then from the dispatcher's point of view, and above the dispatcher too, like how do we group shipments together? You have pickup at hub. You have maybe a secondary hub on the way when you want to do a bulk load. And then how do we get an analytics at this? Like we want to know that the routing we're doing is optimized and the best. We want to know if there are problems with some drivers, for example. Like that type of analytics is like absolutely key for many of these companies that are without Onfleet or similar software that would be flying blind.
So in the course of your career, and certainly in your leadership position now, like what hard-won lessons do you have in terms of putting a great team around you and selecting people you want to work with and just kind of building a team and a culture around you so you can actually do great things?
I read a good book a while ago that really resonated with me. And I think it didn't really change anything. I was operating that way. I think I have it right here, actually, behind me, by David Marquet. Turn the ship around. He's a submarine commander, slightly bigger than a tag, but really like having a philosophy where you create independence, but within the framework of responsibilities also. So you do follow up and so on, but you're really encouraging people to drive. So on. I think it's important to make sure you have a culture where you really fight against siloing, knowledge siloing, and so on. And that as a manager philosophy, you should try to strive to make yourself obsolete. Try to create a team structure that can operate fairly independently out of you. You don't want to try to be the smartest person in the room. Like you want them to be the smartest person in the room. And so like having that philosophy and mindset, I think really is like top down. Like if you don't have that mindset yourself towards your direct reports, your managers, the directors, they're not going to have it towards their groups and their teams and so on. So like really like influence that culture overall and like nurturing people to speak up and to disagree. Like we have definitely like a disagree and commit mentality here at Onfleet. But like, yeah, hiring is important also, Justin. Like you have to hire the right people with the right mindset and so on. And some skills, technical skills, those can be learned. And much more important than the personality is the right one. It's not an official Onfleet policy. It's a personal policy of mine that, yeah, we're not hiring a-holes. That's just not going to happen. Like if they fit with the team, if they can't collaborate well, then that's not a hire. And still like, we want people from different backgrounds and different experiences at Onfleet for sure. But the skill to collaborate and work through problems together, that's super important.
I'm sorry to hear that I'm not a good fit for the Onfleet team, but
I was waiting for it.
You knew it was coming.
I knew it was coming.
I love that. And yeah, if I start getting really busy, that's the biggest hiring signal that we have is like, if all that stuff is bubbling up to Aaron and to me, then it's like, oh yeah, we have problems to solve down the company. I think that's spot on. I love that. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, and I'm in full agreement. The culture is so critical. It's one thing to love what you do, but it's another thing entirely to love who you do it with. So that's something I think is just the goal. That's the mission, right? For every business, I think in a general sense. And I find it harder to do the larger the organization gets. But I think that if I were to work for a larger organization, that would still be so critical in my mind.
Oh, absolutely.
So I've got another question I wanted to back up to for just a second, because we spent some time talking about the groups of people that you have to satisfy. I mean, obviously the business itself, but also your drivers and your customers and your dispatchers and things like that. And then even in a more broad sense, you're just generally dealing with a lot of logistics. And I'm curious if, in addition to applying AI and the agentic approach to your software development, have you applied it also to your process development and how to maybe better handle or make more efficient all of those logistics?
You mean the internal logistics, like how R&D is running? Or
you're obviously dealing with a customer who needs to ship something. You're dealing with the dispatcher who's going to be grouping that with other shipments. You're dealing with the driver who's going to be delivering that. And then the ultimate consumer when they receive that, and all of the different elements that go into that process that have to then be reflected in some way in your software for all of those different people to interact with it. So my question is more, have you applied AI to working through those sorts of logistics and those sorts of problems to then reflect the software?
So analytics has really been the first class citizen with Onfleet for a long time. And we have that also in machine learning, but more like the traditional machine learning rather than before agentic models became like common. And last year, we really started to dig into that as well. So we have a whole team just focusing on making our analytics much more clear, but also making it customizable. So I think last week, we actually released a new model for that so that customers can start making customized analytics and insights that are really important for them, which might be a little bit different from one company to another. So we do have a default set, but also that they can create their own customizable analytics. And it's really about finding the insights and being able to drill into them. And that's something that we had the good set before. We're making it much more powerful now, and we're going to continue to drive in that area. It's so much to tap into. Like a company like Onfleet also has like an immense wealth of data. And so like really driving that part much more for us. I think we're really good right now with like routing prediction and picking the optimal routes, but we can be much better that way as well. Like we have so much historical data around routes and streets and so on that we can really boost the routing engines that we're already using with more insights, like doing predictions even better. So it's like an immense area of vertical slices for analytics that we can like spend a lot of time in. And I'm really excited about our team and the work they're doing there.
That's great. Yeah. And last question for me, and then I'll kick it over to Justin. But with that in mind, what is next? What's next for Onfleet? Where are you going? What's on the roadmap?
Oh, I don't know what I could reveal.
I don't want to get you in trouble, but
yeah, I'm very excited about a new product, like a market slice I'm really digging into. We have a few beta customers about it that's really going to open up things for Onfleet in general and also be able to service our customers much better. And we're still in beta mode though, so I think I'm not going to shout out what it is.
That's all right.
But I'm really excited about it. And it's been something that's been brewing now for 3/4 of a year almost.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Oh yeah. Can't wait to see that. Justin, I'm going to give you the last question.
It's always the same last question, Aaron.
I know.
What did we not ask you about that we should have? What did we totally miss with the interview?
Oh my goodness. No, there's such a big space to ask about and different ways of driving things. I think it did a good job. They could easily probably have a whole day of just talking about different topics like A/B testing, demographics, actually like really dig into culture in general, how to establish that culture. I think is huge as well. But yeah, like, I think we touched on many of these.
Yeah, I'd love to get into culture too.
We can talk about the military career at another time.
Yes, my brain completely spiraled off for a second when you said that. All right. Thank you so much for sharing your time and your insights. Really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me. I appreciate you inviting me.
Absolutely. So we've been talking with Kjell Hedstrom, CTO of Onfleet, and unless I'm mistaken, our first ever tank commander. That's got to go up on the show somewhere.
Also probably our first Swedish American. So
yes, I think that is also true. Kjell, where and how are the best ways for people to reach you if they need to?
LinkedIn, easily enough, but don't just do a connection request because that will be rejected. You have to send me a message. I'm also doing a bunch of open source stuff. I released an Agentic framework called Quest, and I'm doing some other small open source stuff things as well. So through LinkedIn, you can find some stuff that I'm doing there. And if I'm giving you the silent treatment on LinkedIn, you can always put in an issue in one of my open source repos and say, hey, buddy, I want to connect.
Careful what you ask for.
Yeah, who knows?
All right. Justin, my friend, thank you as always.
Always a pleasure, Aaron.
Indeed. And a special thanks to our listeners. If you like what you're hearing, have ideas for the show, or just want to tell us what's on your mind, hit that like button, throw a review our way, subscribe if you are so inclined. And we've also got some lovely forms to be filling out for comments and ideas as well. Otherwise, we will see you all next time on SaaS That App. Thanks for cruising along with us on SaaS That App. We hope you grabbed some insights that were inspiring, actionable, or at least entertaining.
If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review.
Until next time, keep building, keep growing, and keep those apps sassy.